Are the Browns a perfect fit for defensive end free agent Yannick Ngakoue? We're going to talk about this on today's episode because ESPN came out with a really insightful article that had 14 premier free agents available and the best team fit for all 14 guys. And for Yannick Ngakoue, they picked the Cleveland Browns. So let's talk about this. Now, Ngakoue, as we know, had a really good stretch for a handful of teams, starting off in Jacksonville, then bouncing all over the league, right? Minnesota, Las Vegas. He played almost for every team. He became the Nate Robinson of the NFL. And in that stretch of 2016 to 2022, he had at least 8 sacks in every single season. Then last year, with Indianapolis 2 years ago, last year he signs very late in the offseason. I think it was in August with Chicago. He ends up only getting 4 sacks in a shortened season. He played 13 games. Ultimately, a broken ankle removed him for the last quarter of the season. So not the best statistical season, but you can see that Yannick Ngakoue over the last 4 years, sure, there's one outlier, 2023, and maybe that's a sign of what's more to come. But before that, he's got some really good numbers. 9.5 sacks, 10 sacks, 8 sacks. The guy never went below 8 sacks up until 2023. Now, there are some concerns about the effort, I'll say at times, when it comes to him and the run-stopping ability, and maybe he sells out for the pass more so than other guys, but he is pretty good at it. So let's at least entertain the idea of the Browns adding Yannick Ngakoue. Here's what Matt Bowen from ESPN had to say. The Browns have edge depth, led by 2023 Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. But this move would be more about adding a designated pass rusher in Ngakoue. Last season in Chicago, Ngakoue had 4 sacks and 20 pressures, and he has totaled 69 career sacks over his 9 pro seasons. Signing Ngakoue to a 1-year deal would give defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz another rusher to scheme for in true passing situations. I don't disagree with what Matt Bowen says there, right? I love how he kind of invented a DH for defensive ends in the NFL. But yeah, you can't dismiss just the idea or the notion that Andrew Berry and or Jim Schwartz would be interested in adding another pass rusher. Andrew Berry has a long history of always bringing in pass rushers every single offseason. And when you look at the offseason additions at the defensive end position, it's a lot lighter this year than previous years. Now, a couple reasons to that. One, he drafted some guys, Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, that he's looking to see take a step forward in 2024, and he wants to give them the opportunity and the snaps to do so. He re-signs Darius Smith, but still, there is something to be said about, like last year, he added 3 defensive ends. Year before that, he added 4. Alex Wright, Isaiah Thomas, Jadeveon Clowney, and Chase Winovich. Year before that, signed Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley. So historically, Andrew Berry is kind of due to add another pass rusher. But at the same time, he may feel like he's liked the additions he's made the last 2 or 3 years, and he's ready to see Alex Wright, Okoronkwo, and of course Darius Smith have their time and spots on the field and not stunt or take away snaps from those players to give it to Yannick Ngakoue if he feels like that he can get great production out of the players he's already acquired and doesn't have to sign another player and spend more money to do so. So what do you guys think? Should the Browns add Yannick Ngakoue? Give me a yes or give me a no down below in the comment section. Pass rush, defensive end, edge rusher, that's a cornerstone position. And a lot of teams feel like you can never have enough guys at that spot. And they're not wrong, but the Browns' defensive line, it is quite crowded. So I'm content with the current defensive ends. I'm not in the camp of the Browns have to add another defensive end, right? No, I feel like if everyone they have on their roster right now stays healthy going into week 1, this is a defensive line that can generate a lot of pressure and can get after the quarterback without the services of Yannick Ngakoue. You've got Myles Garrett, of course, Darius Smith, but behind them, Okoronkwo, Alex Wright, who had a really quiet rookie season in 2022. He showed some really nice play in 2023 and some versatility across the defensive line as well. So yeah, maybe this is his Zadarius Smith of 2024, where he feels like, F it, let's go get a guy that just comes in on third downs and doesn't have the largest role that maybe he could have on another team. But if we want to get our best pass rushers on the field, we can have a lineup of Garrett, Smith, Okoronkwo, and Yannick Ngakoue. Just 4 defensive ends out there at once. Not the best against the run, but if you are trying to get after the quarterback, that's probably going to be a slightly better outcome than maybe Alex Wright in that spot. Now, of course, you've got Myles Garrett, and I don't need to really add anything on more to what Myles Garrett is capable of doing for the Browns when it comes to adding pass rushing help. But if you're adding Yannick Ngakoue, it's to maybe supplement some of the snaps you were going to give to, I would say, Okoronkwo. Like Zadarius Smith is going to maintain his starting spot opposite of Myles Garrett. So when you look at Zadarius Smith and Okoronkwo a season ago, unfortunately, Okoronkwo missed some time towards the end of the year, but he had some really good games in the beginning of the season, right? I mean, finished the year with 31 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. Pro Football Focus ranked him 62 out of 112 qualifying defensive ends, middle of the pack for a backup defensive end. Sure, you'd always like to have everyone be in the top 10, top 20 of every list, but that's just unrealistic. And for what it's worth, Yannick Ngakoue, he ranked 111th out of 112 qualifying defensive ends last year. So if you're in the camp of, no, not interested in Ngakoue, I hear you. You can make a very sound argument that Okoronkwo is on a better path for 2024 than Ngakoue is, who wasn't the best last year and comes off a broken ankle. So I'm a big believer in Okoronkwo and Zadarius Smith. I feel like, of course, you got Myles Garrett. You can kind of just put him in his own tier of he's going to just wreck the game by himself. But when you look at the other defensive ends, Okoronkwo, Zadarius Smith, and Alex Wright, and Isaiah McGuire, the 4th-round pick from Mizzou last year, we just saw so little of him last year. It's hard to really have a profound opinion on the guy. But I'm confident that the Browns can get after the quarterback with Okoronkwo and Zadarius Smith kind of rotating in and out with one another. And then there's Superman on the other side of the defensive line that you can just, ignore because he's going to do everything you need him to do. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, I just want to show some love and give some shout-outs to some recent subscribers. So, Walt Zolminski, Bill Piper, Sergio Ortiz, Thomas Molesky, thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel. If you want to get a shout-out on a future Cleveland Browns report, hit the sub button down below. I'm always trying to get the audience on screen interactive with myself, so please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already. Now, Okoronkwo, by the way, talked about what he wants to do this upcoming season, and I wanted to share that with you all. He said, this year I'm trying to, I'll say it, I'll speak it into existence. I'm going for double-digit sacks this year. That's the goal every year. I'm just going to put in the work. I hate to say the numbers, but that's what I'm looking to get. And I love this for Okoronkwo, right? He comes off a 4.5 sack season. Before that, with the Texans, 5 sacks and a bit of a smaller-ish role. And then the belief when the Browns signed him was that was really good production efficiency without having a whole lot of minutes or snaps, if you will. And you give him a bigger platform, and he's going to give you a lot more production. Ultimately, that didn't necessarily happen last year because the Browns traded for Zadarius Smith, and that kind of stole Okoronkwo's starting spot. But we still saw a really healthy and consistent rotation when Garrett, Smith, and Okoronkwo were all healthy. But you've also got Zadarius Smith on the other side. He comes off a really good year where, yes, you look at his numbers and you probably just cherry-pick the stats and you look at the sacks and you go, down year for Zadarius, I see. And you wouldn't be completely wrong, but I think you'd be a little bit shallow in your grading and assessment of Zadarius. I mean, the guy generated 60 pressures last year. The pressures were there, and the sacks are coming. I like to think of pressures as like hard-hit balls in baseball. Sometimes you get unlucky, and the third baseman just makes a really nice play on a line drive, and he robs you of probably an extra base hit. That's not going to happen every time. And if you keep hitting those balls hard and you keep the exit velocity up, they're going to start finding the grass, and they're going to start getting you base hits. And I think the same is true for defensive ends, where if you keep generating pressures, yes, you like to turn those pressures into sacks and finish off the play. But just because the quarterback has evaded you a couple of times doesn't mean that the next time you get a pressure, you're not going to get a sack. I think we're going to see the pressures continue to come and the sacks are going to follow. So to round out this video, I thought you guys might be interested to see where the other players that ESPN dubbed as kind of the marquee remaining free agents, where they landed. They had Ryan Tannehill going to the Bucs to back up Baker Mayfield, Hunter Renfrow to the Cardinals, Michael Thomas to the Cowboys, Donovan Smith with Cole Strange getting injured in New England. Maybe the Patriots would be looking to add an extra O-lineman. Dalton Reisner re-signs in Minnesota. Former Cowboys center and Dolphins center Connor Williams to the Broncos. Calais Campbell to the Eagles. Yannick Ngakoue, of course, to the Browns. Emmanuel Ogbah, familiar name, to the Raiders. Xavier Howard to the Texans. Stephon Gilmore returns to Carolina. Steven Nelson to Atlanta. Adoree Jackson to Minnesota. And then Justin Simmons to the Tennessee Titans. Before we sign off, I want to get you guys involved one last time. Give me a bold take for 2024. Whether it's a player stat projection. This guy is going to do better than this player. This guy's going to have this many yards. This team is going to win the division. This team is going to finish last in the division. Give me a bold take for 2024. My bold take may not be the hottest take in the world, given they were a wild card team last year. I think the Packers missed the playoffs, which for a team that finished, 7th in the NFC, that's not very hot. But when you factor in the fact that they won a playoff game on the road, I believe the expectations in the frozen tundra are the Packers return to the playoffs again. And I feel like the NFC North just got so much better. And I'm not sold on Green Bay matching the speed of the way the Bears and the Lions improved. And maybe even the Vikings, so to speak, if J.J. McCarthy works out. But I'm not the biggest believer. So I think the Packers miss the playoffs in 2024. All right, let's bring on Trace to pick a card to wrap up the show. Mr. Gerard, which card would you like to go with?
I'm rolling with the 7 of clubs.
7 of clubs?
Give
me the 9 of diamonds.
I like that.
I feel like I would have a much better percentage if I just picked one card.
That's what I'm starting to do. I'm just sticking with 7s.
I like floating around.
I did too, and then I started being like, well, which one did I pick last time?
All right, what did I say? 9 of clubs?
9 of clubs. I went 7 of clubs.
This card did enter my head. 3 of diamonds. 3 of diamonds. All right. That will do it for us on this edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. Shout out to everyone still watching. If you're still watching, I always love to see who watches all the way to the end of the video. Scroll on down and give me the most recent emoji in your phone or on the computer that you used.